I get to help nonprofits alleviate needs in the world. I get to help fundraisers find joy in their work.
Your positive imprint. Stories are everywhere.
People and their positive action inspire positive achievements.
Your PI could mean the world to you. Get ready for your positive imprint.
Well, happy 2026, everybody. Here's hoping that 2025 left you with a scrapbook full of joy and a trail of happy memories. Well, yowza, hold on to your hats. And I'm wearing one today. Well, you'll never guess what. I jetted off to Europe, hoping to find some eye research that will provide me hope, and I found some in Sweden. Well, hopefully, fingers crossed. But anyway, the excitement absolutely does not stop there. You know how much I enjoy sharing these positive imprints with you and meeting fascinating folks worldwide thanks to the internet. So, during my European escapade, I hugged some of my podcast guests in real life. It was like, well, for me, it was like stepping into a dream. Brilliant visits I had, just brilliant. Well, in 2025, I was also elected the first woman fire chief of my fire department. Wow. And I do certainly enjoy serving my community as a volunteer firefighter. Well, my family remains committed to philanthropy through hands-on efforts, which we believe are essential for creating positive imprints in the world. And today's guest is truly exceptional, particularly in his role dedicated to fundraising for organizations that address diverse needs of individuals around the globe. Without the efforts of individuals like my guest today, and all of my previous heroes on this podcast, the vital information regarding their work and initiatives that they champion would remain unavailable to inspire positive change from people like yourself. Well, I am over the moon to kick off another year of Your Positive Imprint podcast episodes for you, where guests are revolutionizing our world for a brighter, more sustainable future through education and information. Well, thank you for listening in, all of you and all of my new listeners. Your support means the world. Well, I've been independently producing this podcast to maintain its accessibility, and if you feel inclined to support my efforts and be part of the production, you can contribute at buymeacoffee.com/yourpositiveimprint or PayPal at paypal.com/paypalme/yourpositiveimprint. Well, here's to creating more positive imprints together. Today I am featuring Jeff Schreifels, owner of Veritus Group, and Veritus Group is a global leader in major gifts and mid-level fundraising strategy. Well, so what does this mean? Well, it means that Jeff's 30 years experience has assisted nonprofits such as St. Jude's and United Way in raising millions of dollars through strong donor-focused relationships. Now that's key, is that relationship, and we're going to learn more about that today. As a renowned speaker and author, he is dedicated to transforming nonprofit fundraising by sharing inspiring success stories, those stories that we love hearing that are part of building positive imprints and part of those legacies of the past and of the future and, of course, of our present. And I am looking forward to our enlightening conversation with Jeff Schreifels. Jeff, welcome to Your Positive Imprint.
Hi, Catherine. Thanks for having me today.
Awesome. Absolutely. So you have been around in the fundraising world for 3 decades.
Yeah, a long time.
A very long time. Not to just get started right on fundraising, which I don't want to. I want to first get started on Jeff and learn a little bit more about you. But one of the questions is, why fundraising? Did you have a background in accounting? Were you working with nonprofits? So, again, welcome. And let's start with Jeff, who you are and where you're from.
Well, I'm Jeff Schreifels, and I live in Philadelphia. And to answer your question, I was a history and secondary ed major coming out of college. And I thought I was going to teach high school history in the inner city of Philadelphia. And at the time, and this was like 1988, there weren't any openings at that time. So I had to find a part-time job at least. So I reached out to a small nonprofit that I knew of because they were a nonprofit magazine. And I used a lot of their articles in some of my college papers. And so I just called them, got white pages, looked them up, and called them. And I said, hey, do you have any jobs? And they said, well, we actually have this fundraising job open. And I said, well, I don't know anything about fundraising, but I'll come down. I'd love to come down and talk to you about it. So I did, and they hired me. Now, they probably hired me because I was willing to take the really low salary that they were willing to pay. And they said, you can learn how to do this on the job. And I did. And being someone who's very curious and wants to learn new things, I learned as much as I could about fundraising, and I made a lot of mistakes doing fundraising. But I started to really understand what it was all about. And I think a key moment during that time was, I had to write fundraising appeals and send them out. And then the beautiful thing is I would get all the returns. The people would send it back in a little BRE. And I remember getting this one specific check in the mail for $5. And you could tell that it was written by a really old person from their squiggly handwriting. And this person wrote in that note section, I love what you do. I wish I could give more. And it made me realize that people wanted to give. They found joy in giving. And this little amount was a lot for this person. And that's when I really started to fall in love with fundraising, because I think that's when I realized at a very young age that people found joy in their giving. And also at the same time, by doing that, they made an impact in the world. And I got to be the person to deliver that, to bring it together. And that hooked me. And so from that moment, I just dedicated myself to learning the craft and learning all aspects of fundraising, from direct response to major gifts to planned giving, all of those things. And I was able to work at an agency for 12 years, to work with large nonprofits. I've worked with really small nonprofits. For 8 years, I was a development director for 2 small nonprofits. So I know what it was like to be the only person really doing the fundraising. And in 2009, my partner, my former business partner, I got together and created Veritus Group, really out of a desire to help nonprofits around major gifts, because that was an area that we felt was really underdeveloped. And we wanted to bring a very disciplined approach to major gifts that had a structure and a process and an ongoing accountability and management that we saw in the direct response world a lot, but we brought it to major gifts. And we saw some tremendous things happening, because what happened is it allowed fundraisers the time to build real relationships with donors. If they had this structure, if they had goals and they had revenue plans, they were then able to know exactly what to do, and they had the time to build those relationships. Because that's what fundraising is really all about. It's not about money. It really is about building relationships and really being that bridge between the donor and their desire to change the world, and all the things that the nonprofit does to do just that. And when you do that right and bring them together, the money follows, right? And that's been our ethos at Veritus for all those years. And it's proven out because we've helped hundreds of organizations do that work.
That's inspiring with how you got started. And I want to add to that excitement and that joy. So being an educator, we do St. Jude's Children's Hospital fundraisers. I'm at a private school. And the students who are in charge of it, they see the videos of the children.
Yeah.
They connect with the kids. Sometimes they write letters to the students and the student writes back.
Yeah.
Sometimes the parent writes back with not the happiest of ending story, right? And it touches kids' hearts. Kids come in with money, maybe 30 cents, 40 cents. These are third graders. They are just absolutely thrilled to give that money.
Yeah.
And it is a great feeling. So mistakes. What are some of the mistakes that are important? Because I have to do fundraiser. I still work with nonprofits. What are some of the mistakes?
Oh, gosh. I mean, some of the mistakes, just simple things like when you're writing a fundraising letter, not asking for a gift, or it can happen, or talking about how wonderful everything is. Donors want to solve problems. And if you don't have a problem for them to solve, they're more apt not to support what you're trying to do. So those are some simple ones. But I think the biggest mistake I ever made in fundraising was in my second job. And it was very early on in my tenure with this organization. And I was still young. I was still in my 20s. And I wanted to make an impact as a fundraiser there. They really hadn't had a full-time fundraiser before. And so what I did was I concentrated on who are the largest donors, when was the last time they gave, and let's set up a plan for me to go ask them for money. So it was all, first of all, it was all centered around, let me get the money. And I remember there was one board member who had been giving like $10,000 annually. And he hadn't given in like 2 years. So I was like, this is prime, right? Person hasn't given in 2 years. They gave, $10,000 and a board member. So I set up a meeting with him and went to his office, and he told me all of these things about himself, about his family, that if you are a really good major gift officer, you would think this is gold because he's telling me all this great stuff. But I wasn't really listening. What I was trying to do was figure out when he was going to pause long enough so that I could go in and ask him for the $10,000. And I found that moment and I caught him off guard, but so much so that he basically was like, yeah, I think I can do $10,000. And I was, great. And I left, drove back, and on the drive, I was feeling so great about myself. Like, hey, I've only been at this job for a month or so, and I already got this big gift, and I'm going to go back to the office, and the CEO is going to be really happy with me. So I get to the office, and the CEO looks a little bit upset. And he said, hey, Jeff, can you come into my office? And I did. And he said, well, were you just with a meeting with Dan? And I said, yeah. Well, he just called and resigned from the board. He was so off put by your approach that he just thought, if this is the way your organization is going to be, I don't want to be a part of it.
Wow.
And fortunately, my boss had a lot of patience with me. He said, look, I know you went in with the intention of trying to do something good, but the way you did it was not right. Over the long term, I was able to win back that relationship. And eventually he came back on board and he did give that $10,000 gift. But I learned a lot about fundraising that day. It's not just about the money. Mm-hmm. It is about building that relationship. But that was a big mistake, going after the money.
And that's a good lesson to learn. And that brings me to some words that you've used when I was reading about you. Yeah. So, and this is exactly what you're talking about. There's a difference between transactional gifts and transformational gifts. And I love the word transformation. There was a fellow I had on the podcast over in France. I think it was 2019. He said transformation is total change and you can't go back.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot go back. Once it's transformed, you can't go back. And that's the good part about transformation, hoping that, the transformation was a positive one. And this is what you're talking about, is that relationship building. So transactional gift is what you were going after.
Yeah.
But you realized it's part of the transformation. It's part of community building. How do you talk to these clients to let you in the door to go talk to people out there?
Well, what we do with our clients, many of them are transactional in their approach to fundraising, meaning they're either doing hands-off type of fundraising where they're doing direct response letters or emails or social media to try to bring in revenue. And those aren't necessarily bad things, but they aren't transformational type of giving. That's a way to maybe acquire new donors or get donors to think about you for the first time and start to dip their toe into what you're doing. And so though that kind of fundraising isn't necessarily bad, but it's not that transformational what we're talking about. And I think transformational can be two ways. One is a gift can be transformational for an organization to go into a different place or to provide something that, you're right, they'll never go back to. It'll take them somewhere new. But it's also transformational, could be for the donor themselves, that it's a gift where they themselves are sacrificing their hard-earned work that they've done all their lives and giving some of that away to make something better happen in the world. And so that transforms them themselves. And so how we help our clients do that with their donors is really to help them understand that you have to understand, what are your donors' passions and interests? Why do they have them? And how does it relate to all the things that your organization does to make the world a better place? And match those passions and interests with those specific programs and projects that do that. Because we know that when a donor feels connected that way, that's when transformational gifts happen, not only for the donor, but for the organization.
Indeed. So for your organization, Veritus Group, you're not removing this, and I just want to make sure that listeners understand this.
Yeah.
You're not saying that the donor that sends in their $5, their 34 cents from the child, that's not
Right.
of little importance. That's of great importance.
Yeah.
And you're working with the big donors where you're going into this larger world of big money financing, donations. And so let's just talk a little bit about the fundraising world. Because people think that truly, and I'm going to bring some things in because maybe you can answer questions, but part of fundraising is spending money.
Correct.
You have to get a letter out. You have to get your brand out. You have to get the information out.
Yes.
And you might have these great points that are your organization's doing great here, but hey, we need to get to this place, as you were talking about. We can't get there without dollar amount, but we're working towards it. So my husband and I, we will receive umpteen times, you know where this is going, from nonprofits, the calendars, the address labels, and I know they probably get it for free. And we always ask, please don't send it. We want you to keep the money. And they never leave that as an option. And then they send out more mail.
Organizations will use those kind of things that we call premiums, those calendars. They'll do all kinds of. Now, the reason they do that is because it works. It elicits a response. Maybe not from you, but they're doing it because it actually does work. They wouldn't do it if it didn't work, in other words. So in acquiring new donors or cultivating small dollar donors, it is very effective to do it. Now, if a donor if you are a donor of that organization and you write them and said, I don't want any of those things, then a good organization will honor your preferences and mark that in the database so that you don't see those kind of things any longer. But if you're not a donor and you're just getting it for the first time and you say, don't send this, most often they'll never probably talk to you again. Or it'll be some other group that you might say, oh, I see this kind of thing all the time. But the reason organizations do that is because it does elicit enough response to make it worth it to do it. It's a fundraising tactic that elicits a response. It awakens something in the potential donor to say, oh, I'm going to get this calendar. I feel like I should send them a gift.
Right. It's like you don't want to walk out of a restaurant without leaving a tip.
Correct. But what they've been able to calculate is, does the cost of all of that, does the revenue that we're going to bring in or the number of new donors that are going to come in from it justify the cost of that initial package, right? That's what they're always looking at. What is the ROI, the return on investment, and the number of new donors, the percent response that we get back? Does it justify the cost of sending that out? And so they'll not only will a good organization justify it based on the initial amount of revenue and the response they get, but they'll look at what is the long-term value of a donor that gives that gift. Because we know that if we bring in 100 donors at a long-term value of $400, over time, we're going to get $4,000 from that group of donors.
And that is true. Now, for Veritus Group, how do you go about with your fundraising?
Yeah, so ours is relationship-based. So, for example, in Major Gifts, we help organizations create a portfolio of no more than 150 qualified donors for every major gift officer. You think of a major gift officer who has 150 donors in their own portfolio. These donors who are qualified have already said, I want a relationship with you. They may have given a gift that qualified as a major gift, but they've also said to the organization, yes, I want to find out more about your organization. I want someone to come visit me. I want someone to represent me in the organization and tell me more about it. Okay. So they have 150 qualified donors in a full portfolio. They tier those donors A, B, and C from the highest level donor to the lowest level of 150. And then they have a revenue goal attached to every donor and a plan for how they're going to cultivate and solicit that donor over the course of the next 12 months. And then with some of them, they might even have a 2 or 3 year plan for how they're going to move them into a transformational gift, a 6, 7, 8 figure gift over time. So we help that organization set that up. And then we work with them every week to give them strategy, encourage them, ask them questions, help them cultivate those donors and keep them focused and accountable to their plans.
Hence the transformational gift.
Yeah, that's the result of that. Over time, you will start to see those transformational gifts. Not all 150 are going to give 6, 7, 8 figure gifts. A handful of them will. And many of them are going to give, $5,000, $10,000, and hopefully move up their giving a little bit every year. But of those group, maybe 20 of them are really going to start to give much higher gifts. Why are they going to do that? Because you're building those relationships, you're building trust with the donor, and you're serving them well, and you're showing them how their gifts are making a difference. And when you do that well, that's when donors feel connected and want to start giving more.
Hearing it from you, it is a lot of work, and it is a lot of keeping them focused and keeping the brand. And I look at St. Jude's Children's Hospital and United Way. They're your clients. And in order for them to do their work, they need a lot of money to help all of those families not just from the United States, but around the world who do come
Yeah.
with their children.
Yeah. In every local community, there's a United Way, basically, that's doing something in the community
Yes.
and having to raise money to make that happen.
Yeah. Well, wow. Hats off to you for working so hard on doing that and building Veritus Group to what it is today. Do you do more supervisory right now, or are you out in the field?
Well, as the principal and owner, my role is really to set the vision and the long-term strategy for Veritus today. But back in the day when it was just two of us, yes, I did all the work that our current client experience leaders do every day with our clients. So everything they have done, they do with their clients, I've done. But today I'm more working on building new business, marketing, and making sure the company's got a set vision. And, we're international now. So we work with clients in Europe and Spain and the UK. And so that's kind of my role. And then, part of that is also the brand and speaking at conferences and writing books and blogs and doing podcasts and things like that to let people know what we do.
The work that you're doing is so important, and working with people who aren't able to go do the hands-on, but they're philanthropists and they want to provide.
That's right.
And I think whenever I think of philanthropy, I always think of my parents, of course, and how they raised us, and we were hands-on. And my mother's she's going to be 92, and she's still at the soup kitchen. She still goes to the homeless shelter, and
that's amazing.
It is very amazing. And she's very involved in the community, and she also has a voice, and she's very opinionated. I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, I think what you were kind of hinting at is you grew up in a family that is givers. They're lovers of people, which is really what philanthropy is about. Mm-hmm. And when you grow up in that way, you too are that way. I grew up in a house where my dad would bring us around the kitchen table every payday. And the first thing that he did, he showed us his paycheck, and then he would write out checks to charity, and then he would pay the bills. And so growing up in a house where that was the center, is that there were always people who needed it more than we did. Even though there were times, I grew up in a working class family. My dad was an electrician, and there were a lot of times he was unemployed. He would take his unemployment check and do the same thing because there was always someone that needed it more than we did. And so growing up in a family like that, I mean, how could I not be a fundraiser?
Exactly. My mother raised us, both my parents, but mom's phrase growing up and still today is, and we've heard the quote, "I've passed this way, but only once. If there's some good I can do, then let me do it." And so that is what she's doing even at almost 92 years old.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is also role modeling what your dad did, role modeling. And people want to help, but they don't know how. And sometimes the only way they know how is to make out a check or send money.
Yeah. So that check is an extension of helping. That's their way of being, hey, I can't be on the front lines like you are, but I can give you this to help you do that. I
love the way you summarized that, the extension of being on the front line. That's great. I like that. Now, I have a question also on, and I know this doesn't have to do with what you're doing, but is it effective scan codes? Scan codes. Are those, how I use them, so I know they're effective with me because I don't make checks out anymore just because of the fraud. But I will do Apple Pay, or I will scan that and I will just send the money in. Yeah. So is it as effective as what it is on me?
Yeah, I think anything that a nonprofit can do to make it easy for people to give, they should do it. Because I think no matter what the gift amount is, the minute that you decide to send it, whether it's through a check, through a scan code, through a text message, whatever way, something really mystical happens when you give of yourself in that way to make something else happen, to alleviate a need or pain in the world, and you're sending your $10 or $100,000 or $10 million, something mystical happens in that moment. And I think to make it as easy as possible for donors is great. The more giving that people can do, the better.
Mystical. I also like that. I like your choice of words today. And when I think mystical and when I think philanthropist, I think often of Melinda Gates. Her Moment of Lift. She has a book out, and I love her book. It's called The Moment of Lift.
Okay.
And exactly what you are talking about. That moment of, oh my gosh, I can help and I'm going to do it. It's that moment of lift. It's lifting you up and saying, by gosh, I've got to go in. And so what is our moment of lift? Right? And that's a fair question to ask people. What are your positive imprints? And you have remarkable positive imprints. So do you have anything else you want to share that I haven't touched upon before we get to your last inspiring words you'd like to share with the listeners?
Well, I've been thinking about your positive imprints. You know, what are the positive imprints that we're making on the world? And, you know, I get to help nonprofits alleviate needs in the world. I get to help fundraisers find joy in their work. But I also get to help our people that worked at Veritus having a meaningful employment. You know, that's another positive imprint that I get to have every day. And that allows me to help, to know that I get to help people around the world, from Veritus people, staff people, have joy in their work and meaningful employment is incredible feeling. And, the bottom line is that allows me to be able to love what I do every day. So, I really thank you for the whole idea around positive imprint. Like, it really made me think, like, what are some of the positive imprints I'm making, our company's making, the clients that we're working with are making. And when you really sit and think about it, it's quite incredible. So thank you for allowing me to think about that. I think that's really neat.
That's a wonderful compliment, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That was inspiring. And what would you like to say to listeners as your last inspiring words to them moving forward?
Well, I hope that this podcast inspires people to think about their own positive imprint. I'm doing it through fundraising and having my own company, but other people are doing it in other ways. And what I did, I went through an exercise a couple of days ago preparing for this, just thinking about what are some of the positive imprints I'm making or that I'm a part of. And so hopefully people will be inspired to do that themselves. And it's quite a great exercise. And you realize what an impact you actually are making on the world. And I think that's pretty cool.
Jeff Schreifels, that is awesome. Very inspiring. Awesome. And I thank you for being on the show and for your transformational gifts yourself that you are providing to the world with your own positive imprints. So thank you so, so very much, Jeff Schreifels.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
To learn more about Jeff, go to veritusgroup.com, veritusgroup.com. You can also find him on LinkedIn, Jeff Schreifels, and that is JEFFSCHREIFELS. Also, you can find Veritus Group at Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and his podcast, Nothing But Major Gifts. Thank
Great.
you again, Jeff Schreifels.
Thank you.
Follow me on Instagram, my YouTube channel, Your Positive Imprint, and you can also follow me on Facebook and connect with me on LinkedIn. Check out my website, yourpositiveimprint.com, where you can learn more about the podcast and sign up for email updates. Music by the legendary and talented Chris Knoll. chrisknoll.com. CHRISNOLE. Thank you again for listening and for your support of this podcast. Your Positive Imprint. What's your PI?